Good morning, Jared. Would you like to just introduce yourself to everybody that's watching?
Sure. I'm Jared Whitaker. I am an author and campaigner around things like domestic abuse, false allegations, parental alienation. I primarily focus on men, obviously, because I'm a man who was abused and went through all of this stuff. But actually, the stuff I do is really to try and raise awareness for domestic abuse and things that need to change in this country and worldwide around it. No one should be abused, and that's
Yeah.
hopefully we can stop it sometime.
Oh, yeah. Well, if they ever start listening and taking it seriously, then we might stand a bit of a chance because
Yeah.
I don't think anybody takes it seriously. To be fair, I
No.
think that I don't see any point in having the domestic abuse bill in place because nobody adheres to it. What's your views on that?
Yeah, I think there's a problem in society in general, and this is not just a UK thing. I mean, it's the same in South Africa where I'm
Yeah.
from. Same with everyone I've spoken to in the US and other countries where it's such a hush hush subject. No one wants to talk about it. So it's not something that gets spoken about a lot, and that's obviously contributing factor to why people don't come forward and speak up, say they're in an abusive relationship. There's this weird shame associated with it that there doesn't need to be. And even taking away all the legal stuff and all the policies and things that have to change because they're rubbish, um, just changing that societal view where people are comfortable to talk about it. There's nothing wrong. I mean, I'm at that stage now, that I'm years past my abuse, where I literally will walk up to someone and we'll be chatting and they'll be like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I tell them what I do now, and they're like, "Oh," and you can see they're uncomfortable, and it's
Yeah.
like, why are you uncomfortable? If I said to you I was a doctor curing cancer, you'd be like, "Wow, amazing."
Yeah.
But I'm talking about this, and it's weird. It
But
just needs to
yet,
stop.
but yet so common. We
Yeah.
should be talking about it. What do you think? What do you think defines? Because a lot of professionals will say, "Oh, it was a toxic relationship." I had that said to me that the relationship was toxic. Um, but actually, I think that from cases that we deal with on a daily basis, from me looking in, having lived it for many years, and both and post separation abuse as well for 6 years, that was enabled by this. I'm not going to say it, but by this not fit for purpose system, um,
Yep.
and I just think, to me, it's so transparent. It is so transparent what's happening. I can see it a mile off in any meetings that. But yet, a lot of professionals just don't see it, do they?
No. No. I mean, I think how can you unless you've lived it? And how can you really have that proper feeling? I see people who are like, "Oh well, I've got my degree in blah 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 blah," and it's like, "You ever been in an abusive relationship?" No. Okay, so you know a portion because obviously there is an academic portion to know, but you can't know the full story. So why aren't these people making policies, making laws, coming to people like us and
Mhm.
saying, "You need to be involved in this. You're a guy, you need to be involved in it because it happens to men. You're a woman, you need to be involved in it because it happens to women. Let's get a representation from every kind of factor and do something
Yeah,
about
I
it."
think they do come to us, Jared, but they basically cherry pick us brains. Um,
Oh yeah,
so
yeah,
they want to listen to us, but they only want to listen to certain parts of it that's going to benefit them. That's what I
yeah,
find. We don't, as survivors. I don't know at what point they said to me that you are not a victim anymore of domestic abuse. You were a survivor. This were like probably 3 weeks into my journey of post separation abuse. How the hell can you be
yeah,
defined? How can you be defined as a survivor when what I was facing 6 years down line of post separation abuse that was allowed and enabled by the system was as horrific as what I lived with, if not worse.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I went through it for 4 years as well, and what I find, and I mean, obviously, I deal primarily with men that have gone through these things, and in my experience and their experience, what I find is, as men, and I'm sure this is probably the same for some women as well, is you don't define it as abuse unless it's physical, and especially guys that go, "Are you being abused?" and they go, "Well, no, I'm not being abused. She doesn't hit me." And it's like, well, she doesn't have to hit you for it to be abuse. And then you take them through all the things like, gaslighting, financial control, emotional abuse, and they're like, yes, 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 yes. And it's the same with post-separation. It's like, oh, you don't even live in the same house anymore. How can they be abusing you? It's like, well, they're still trying to control me with this. They still got financial control, etc. They're denying me access to my kids. There's plenty of other things you can do to abuse someone besides hitting them. And I think that is also something that society doesn't really understand. They understand the beating part, but not the other side of things.
yeah, I mean, but it just never ceases to amaze me that you've got police officers and social workers and judges that are not trained to recognise things that are so, they're just so clear, aren't they? You know, you can see it. I can read it like a book, me. I can read it like a book, and I
Yeah.
can see how, like when you start the process, particularly from, if we go right back to the beginning, say from police, which are not, they're not using the laws as they should be. They're not protecting victims with or without orders in place. They're not fit for purpose. They're not worth paper they're written on. We all know that. Absolute waste of time. And then, you get social workers involved, and some of their reports are laughable. They're absolutely laughable. And
Yep.
even just in my report, I mean, there were my children's ages were incorrect. The names weren't correct. Simple things like that. That's beside that. That's just the simple stuff. That's beside the really
Yeah.
complex stuff that were all wrong. And then it goes into family court. That judge reads what's on paper, and it's like, you haven't got a say because you're not allowed to speak unless you're spoken to, basically, are you?
Yep.
And you can't defend yourself. And if you were to defend yourself, you're made out like you're neurotic or crazy.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I'll add in there to what you just said is you're lucky if the judge even reads what's on the paper.
Well, yeah.
I mean, sometimes they
Yeah.
show up and they haven't read a damn thing.
Yes, that happens a lot. I had one judge where he actually said, I've not had time to read the court bundle this morning, so can you just update me because I've only got back from holiday this morning. These
Yeah.
are this
I
this
had
is
one.
people's lives. They are playing
Yeah.
God with people's lives, aren't they?
I had one come in and he goes, "What are we here for today? I don't even know what this is for." It's like, and I can tell you that was for a renewal of a non-molestation order, which obviously we know they're not worth the paper they're printed
No,
on, but
no.
still, that should be seen as a serious thing in the eyes of the law, and he didn't even know that was the hearing he was coming into. He had no clue, absolutely none. And you just think, like, what hope do you have?
You haven't. You have not got. It is like leading lambs to slaughter, isn't it? And
Yeah,
it's a double-edged sword because if you show too much emotion, your mental health is suffering, or if you don't show enough emotion, then you're emotionally not, invested in your children, and either way, it is literally like rolling a dice, isn't it?
yeah. No, I mean, I was. So my first involvement with everything was with the police, and basically what happened was she was beating me, and this had been going on for years. Loads of forms of control, like everything, every kind of form of abuse going. But she was literally beating me for about 30 to 45 minutes straight. And I was covering up, like that to try and... So my arm was getting most of the stuff, my head a bit. And now I'm a big, big guy. So I'm 6'2", I weigh 130 kilos, I do strongman, I compete in competitions, I'm very big. I said to her, that's enough, I can't deal with this anymore, I'm calling the police. And this was about a week or two after I started seriously considering suicide. And I just finally got to that point where I said, enough, I'm calling the police. And I went to go and get my phone to call the police. And she literally picked up her phone out of her pocket and went, help, police, my husband's attacking me. They showed up at the house. They took one look at me. They took one look at her. And they were like, right, you're under arrest for assault. And they took me. And I told them what happened. And they were like, no, you're under arrest for assault. They arrested me, took me to the police station. Eventually, they leave you there for like nearly a day before they'll even talk to you. They eventually, when they took me out of the cell and they took me to interview me, the policeman said, why are you so bruised? And I was like, what do you mean, why am I so bruised? He's like, you've got bruises all over you. I'm like, because she was beating me. And he's like, no, but she doesn't have a mark on her. And I'm like, yes, because she was beating me, not me touching her. And he was like, and he spent the next 3 hours trying to prove that it was me, basically. And eventually, when he realized he couldn't and it wasn't me, they said, oh, okay, go. And they just let me go. But, I was black and blue, and she didn't have a mark on her, and they still just arrested me and believed her because of how I look and, the fact that I'm a guy and I'm big, and they're just like, oh, it must be you.
Yeah. Yeah. But even if you'd not got the bruises, how could you have proved the domestic abuse? And I suppose this is, I suppose, it is a tough one, isn't it, for services in that scenario, because, I do think that, we automatically think that it is just women that are abused, and it's not. I mean, domestic abuse comes in that many forms. It's so complex that it is difficult to recognise. But even with the basic training, it is just not enough. And I mean basic training that social workers have. Police said that they are trained in it, but I've yet to see that, unfortunately. They don't understand how trauma works at all. And for me, I mean, obviously, you're male, I'm female, and I get men trying to attack me, on Twitter or on social medias. And the thing is, I'm female and I support women because I'm lived experience. I can't comment or try to. I've not had that experience as a male, so I mean, I don't even entertain them. I just ignore them because there's just some of them are just complete. I get the same
thing just from just the other way around.
That's not going to achieve anything at all. It's pointless, and I refuse to waste my time, my energies on morons like that.
The example I always, whenever they comment on my stuff, so I get like women commenting on my things on YouTube or Twitter or whatever, and they say, oh, but you're saying men are abused, but basically who cares because more women are abused. That's always the comment, not worded quite like that, but that's always the comment. And I always go back with the same thing. If I tell you that 50 people died in London today, and you said, who cares because 100 people died in New York today, what does that accomplish? 50 people still died. They deserve to have something done about that. So it doesn't matter if, there's poles apart in how many women and men are abused. There's not that pole apart that people think. I think men don't come forward as much, so there is still a difference, but not that vast. But who cares? If 1 million men are getting abused a year and 10 million women, surely the 10 million women should get all the justice and support they need, and the 1 million men should get all the justice and support they need, not, oh, well, we don't need to worry about them because there's more here. That's just ridiculous.
I mean, I really don't care. I don't care if, male, female, black, white, yellow, pink, blue. It ultimately, domestic abuse is domestic abuse, isn't it? And it can happen whether that's, and that doesn't mean intimate partners. That can mean brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles. It is so vast and so complex, and child to parent as well. There's no support for that. We've seen many a situation where children have been brought up in that environment, and then they've started attacking the parent that they've resided with because they've known no different. It's learnt behaviours, isn't it? There's no support around that.
I interviewed a woman last week who her husband abused her badly, and she finally got him out of her life. And then, as soon as her son turned about 17, he started, and she had to get her son removed from the house. But she said it was so difficult, like there was just nothing in place for her because it was her child.
Yeah, and that's like, it's unconditional love, innit? So it's kind of like, what do you do in that sort of situation? And then with nobody to help you around you as well. You know,
but that's why the system, the authorities, the policies, everything that goes with it needs to change to operate on a very simple principle that anyone can be an abuser and anyone can be a victim. And if you take everything else out of it, if you take man, woman, black, white, young, old, if you take all of that out of it and just build a system that is an evidentiary-based system where if you have the evidence that it's happening, you're believed, and if you have the evidence that someone's lying about a false accusation, you're believed, but it has to be based on evidence, not just on what someone says. Because anyone can say anything.
But they're not even with evidence, they're not acting upon it.
I know, because it's not an evidentiary system at the moment. It's just this weird political system at the moment.
It needs a complete overhaul, doesn't it? It's just none of it works from start to finish. None of it works. They said that there's gaps. The two things that I recognise through my own experiences were there's no communication between any agencies and organisations, and there's no accountability for any of it. So they don't own up if they do make mistakes. I mean, we are all human at the end of the day. Mistakes can be made. But they will not own up to it unless you've gone through this horrendous complaints procedure that basically gets you nowhere, because you can't pursue complaints while you're in proceedings. What's all that about?
Yeah. And if you want to appeal anything, you have to pay for the privilege of appealing something they've done.
But I don't understand why there ain't any common sense around this as to why can't they have it opened up and regulated. It's simple. It's just simple. A simple solution. What is it that they are trying to hide from it? Because the only answers that I can seem to get from that question is to protect the child. Now, for me, the child can still keep anonymous. The child can still be protected. I'm talking about it being regulated, so that you've not just got one judge that's making these judgments on people's, lives and playing God, and they're not there to have the accountability or any consequences of that judgment. How is that ever right?
Yeah, and the judges making decisions, in my experience, what I've experienced, is they're making decisions based on their kind of predisposed ideas or their biases. They're not looking at the facts in front of them because they haven't read the packs. They don't care to read the packs. I mean, I'll give you an example. I went into one hearing where I had a pack of evidence, and when I say evidence, photos, screenshots of text message conversations, recordings. I mean, like full evidence. I mean, you couldn't ignore it. It was there. Mm-hmm. She came in with stories. Literally, he did this to me, he did that to me, with no evidence whatsoever because none exists. The judge, first of all, came in and said, well, I haven't really had a chance to read these. He started looking through them and went, oh, well, there's kind of two packs, both. It sounds like you're both as bad as each other to me. Started speaking to her first. She was crying and, it's terrible, whatever, and she was really putting on a good show, and he was going, shame, there, do you need water, whatever. Turned to me, asked me my name, and as I opened my mouth to try and say the name, he literally went, you stand up when you talk to me. And I had to stand up, and that was, I knew, like, here we go. And he just was not interested in the slightest with anything I had to say, despite the fact that I was the applicant. I had evidence. It was all black and white. And I said to him, if you read my pack in front of you, even just pick 1 or 2 pages, you will see stone cold hard evidence. And he turned around and he said, this is not an evidentiary hearing. That can get pushed out till later. I was like, why am I here? Why am I wasting my time taking the stress? And in my case, I was the CEO of a global IT company. I was going through all of the stuff, and all of, going through counseling for all of the stuff that had happened in the past, and all of those memories and all of these things I'd been through, including the stress of work. I left work to now pursue what I'm doing now, and I had 2 heart attacks. Like, if that's not enough, what is? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. What are you still? Because you mentioned to me before we pressed record that you've got a hearing coming up. Is that for yourself?
Yeah, for myself. I'm still years down the line, still in proceedings.
That is ultimately there to financially cripple you, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been her plan all along that it's delay tactics, forcing delay. I know if I delay and I only answer half of the questions, your solicitor's going to have to chase up on me, and because they have to do that, they're going to charge you more money. And every time I've got to the position where I could afford a solicitor over the years, same tactics have been employed to the point where I can no longer afford the solicitor and have to then represent myself.
Yeah.
And it's obviously a lot harder to do that because I'm not I'm not legally trained or whatever. And I do find that when I go into court looking the way I look, there's just this immediate look at me and they go, there's absolutely no way you're the victim. Like, no chance.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm treated.
Yeah. Do you think that you're treated differently? It's frowned upon, I think, if you've not got legal rep there. Do you? Because I represented myself in end because I felt as though nobody's gonna tell this like I can tell it. This has happened to me, and it's exactly the same with cases. If you're working with a victim or victim stroke survivor, I still think you're a victim until way down the line, till you can finally say, if you're lucky,
it's over.
Yeah, if you're lucky. I mean, I just think that there's so much pressure put on victims to financially meet that criteria, because how can your life depend on somebody getting it right?
Yeah.
If they're having a finding of facts hearing and you're sitting there thinking, well, that didn't happen, that's not right, and you sat there thinking, I want to kick my solicitor under table because that did not happen.
Yeah.
And then that judge has took all that in, which is totally not true. You come out and you say to your solicitor, well, why didn't you rectify that? That's not right. Well, it's not really relevant. Well, it is relevant because that judge has just took that in, and that is false information.
Yeah, but it's a real catch-22 though, isn't it? Because you can represent yourself, but then often you're just not allowed to speak, so you're not given the chance to speak or anything. So there's that. But it becomes this huge catch-22, and I've written about it in my books, like giving advice to guys going through what I went through. Is if you can afford a solicitor easily, go for it. Get a solicitor, because it's going to take some of the stress away from you. It's going to help you. There's lots of forms you have to fill in and stuff like that. And they know the legal side of it, but you need to obviously work with them so that they understand like how important it is to you. But whatever you think it's going to cost at least 3 to 4 times that. So don't think, I can afford £20,000. It's going to cost £80,000, £100,000. It's not going to cost 20.
Yeah.
But if you can't afford it, what do? You have no choice but to represent yourself and go through all the stress, the humiliation, be treated like rubbish, don't know what's going on, not allowed to speak. I mean, I've had so many hearings where I'm just not allowed to speak.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you're letting her speak.
Yeah.
But then
If you
I
try
don't
to
get
speak, they just shut you down, don't they?
But you know what's really funny, and I said this to a solicitor I interviewed the other day for my new book, is all of my hearings, I've had lots. I can't remember the exact, lots of hearings about lots of different things. If I've had a female judge or a female magistrate, I get treated so much more fairly. If I have a male judge, forget it. I am treated like rubbish. And it's so interesting to me. And the solicitor I was interviewing said it's male judges tend to be like more conservative and go with this. They've been brought up that men are violent, women aren't. So if you're a guy, they just assume it's you. But also they're so scared politically of coming across as sexist that they won't. He said, so you always have a better chance with a female judge because they're just more fair. So I always, when I go for a hearing, I pray for a female judge.
Oh, I don't know, me. I think it's pretty much a mixed bag. I've experienced both, and it is literally potluck. It's potluck. I've experienced both, and not just in my own cases, but when I've gone in supporting as well. And some of the comments, some of the way that victims are treated, it is just disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful.
I had a male judge, say in court, and now bear in mind this is a hearing between a victim of abuse who's coming with evidence, someone who is not a victim of abuse, is an abuser, but is claiming to be a victim of abuse. So let's say he's completely fair and impartial. He thinks one of these people is lying and one of them is a victim of really bad domestic abuse, because if you look at the packs of the evidence, really bad, of the stories, really bad. So one of these people has been hectically abused. And he said, I'm only taking this seriously because there's children involved. If there were no children involved, I don't care if you two go and smash each other about. And I sat there thinking, how in the hell can you say this to one of us who's a victim of domestic abuse, and you're saying you don't care if we get smashed about? Obviously, I filed a full complaint against him. This is what he said. This, you can listen to the recording because obviously it's recorded. This is what he said. It's absolutely disgusting. Guess what happened with that complaint? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Did you get a regurgitated letter of apology? Did you not even get that?
Didn't even get that. I got oh well, actually he's this level judge. So you can't complain about him here. You have to complain about him here. So then I went and complained about him here and never got a reply at all.
Yeah. And how much more stress and trauma did that cause? Because that's exactly what it's designed to do, isn't it? Because you can't get any accountability, can you? Ultimately,
I couldn't believe. I mean, I've seen rubbish stuff and been treated badly and things like that. But for someone to say in a domestic abuse case that he doesn't care if people are getting bashed about is just disgusting. I mean, it's disgusting. Like, how can you say that to? Do you think
that he would have said that if there'd have been a journalist in Courtroom? I very much doubt it.
He would have been on his best behaviour and saying all the right things to look politically astute. But because it was just us, no solicitors either.
Yeah.
Say what he wants.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I don't get. I really don't get it. I can't get my head around why. They need to be opened up. It's as simple as that. Because how can one person that doesn't know you, doesn't know her, doesn't know the situation properly, and not even been bothered to read your court bundle or looked at your evidence or anything, make a judgment? They can't, can they? It's impossible. Yeah. But yet they're allowed to do that, crazy. And then when you try and get any sort of justification as to why that judgment's been made, then you can't do anything anyway. It's like you've got to suck it up. That's it. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it.
Well, I mean, not only did I get abused for a very long period of time in a relationship, but then afterwards, I mean, I had to start from scratch. I mean, I'm 42 now. I had to start my entire life from scratch with nothing. I was living in a room in someone else's house. I didn't own anything. I had absolutely nothing. Started from scratch. Was still working, and all my money was going to her so that she could, have all the money and the kids and that. I had nothing. I think I was living on £300 a month. Um, I had absolutely nothing. Financially ruined. Had to start my life again. Mentally ruined. Emotionally ruined. Had to go through all these horrific things. Went through not being allowed to see my kids for nearly a year, which was horrific. Like, all based on people that don't have the foggiest idea of what they're talking about. And, I want to say it because that's the truth.
Hmm.
But I also don't want, I don't want people watching this or reading things to think like, oh my God, there's absolutely no hope for me. Because there is, but be prepared to fight. It's not a
Yes.
straight walk.
Yeah.
You're going up a mountain here.
Yeah, but that's the very point, isn't it? We shouldn't have to fight. We shouldn't have to
No.
fight. You're already probably at the lowest point you've ever been in your entire life. And then it's either sink or swim, innit? It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And then they wonder why you've got people taking their own lives. Because I was certainly
Yeah.
in that place. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And most of the women, I want to say 9 out of 10, they can't see a way out of it. They cannot see a way out of it. And I've sat in with police and I've supported, and the police officers, and a lot of people haven't even stepped foot inside a police station, so they're already scared, on top of already being petrified.
Yeah.
And and I don't agree with that either. I think there needs to be better spaces than police stations.
Yeah.
I think that that all services and organisations are massively underfunded when it comes to this, massively, and I get that. I 100% get that, because we're not funded. We're struggling like mad. We're all volunteers. We don't get salaries, and it's. But the thing is, I've heard officers speak to victims in the most disgusting way, treat in the most disgusting way, with no empathy.
Yeah.
When at that time in your life, all you want somebody to do is wrap their arms around you and tell you you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Why are victims almost being treated like the criminals? I want to say that the entire thing is completely back to front. From
Yeah.
start to finish,
I,
it's
I
back to
was
front.
I was laughed at by the police when I was taken to the police station. I don't know what you call them, like the duty officer or whatever, said to me, "Oh, why are you here?" And I told him, and he laughed at me. He said, "Don't be stupid." Like, okay, sure. I'll just go through 10 years of hell so that you can laugh at me. Like, because there's literally why I'm doing what I do now. I mean, my first book's called "Why Didn't You Just Leave Them and Other Ignorant Things People Say About Abusive Relationships," and
Yeah,
that came off the back of someone saying to me, "Oh, if it was that bad, why didn't you just leave?"
yeah,
Like, it's not that simple, and you don't understand it. So let me write it down for you, and maybe you can learn.
yeah. Or people are always very quick to pass judgment, aren't they, and make
Mm.
comments. And the thing is, them comments can be very cutting.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I can.
I liked so and so. He were
Yeah.
he
Or
were a
oh,
lovely bloke. Or
you must have enjoyed it, or I can't have been that bad, or
yeah,
and I tell you the one that did it for me, and it's the worst out of everything that happened to me. I had someone very, very, very close to me say to me, "You're just as bad as each other,"
yeah,
and that it still to this day haunts me because no, no, we're not, no, we weren't. You had one evil, terrible, horrible person doing the things they were doing, and then lying to everyone and preempting all these things and making this
Yeah.
scenario where they were the victim. And you're telling me
Yes.
I'm as bad as that person.
Yeah.
And that still hurts me to this day.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing about this interview, because it's the person. This
Yeah.
is not acceptable on any level,
No.
and it shouldn't be happening. And I can't for the life of me understand why it's still happening. And I want to say, from what we see on the ground, it is getting worse. It's getting worse because there's they say we need to, so all the services will say we need to start, our authorities, we want to recognise where the gaps are. It's because none of it's joined up. So if you've got a family court case and you've got a criminal case, you can't talk about the criminal case in family court because it's two
Yeah.
separate things. How can it be two separate things when if they're joined together, the evidence is there?
Yeah.
Is it not common sense?
Yeah, I had a family court hearing for child arrangements, and they refused to let stuff from the non-molestation order hearing that I had be brought into because it was separate. And it's like, surely that's important when you're dealing with people who are.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's
just
another issue as well, because judges won't accept that there's been a domestic abuse involvement. I think a lot of them think it's too easy to just call that card. But
I mean,
how
the
can you
problem
have?
is it is too easy to call that card is the other problem.
It is, but the thing is as well, if you've had one judge that has put a non-molestation order in place and then you go into a hearing and the other one's saying this isn't domestic abuse, how can it not be if there's a non-molestation order in place?
Yeah, and you can't get a non-molestation order without providing evidence.
No. And but you've got to, it's very difficult to get a non-molestation order put in place from what we find, unless there's been incidents within the past 3 weeks.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
you know.
Which again is so ridiculous.
Yes.
Because what if you've managed to get out? You've been in hiding. You've been terrified. First of all, it takes you 6 months to get a court hearing. So,
Yeah.
then you want a non-molestation order to try and protect yourself going forward so that you feel safe. And they go, oh, but did anything happen yesterday? No. Oh, then who cares?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, what?
And I've spoke to other organisations and authorities that kind of like, have you got an IDVA qualification? Believe me, and you'll be same, if you've lived that nightmare of a system, then for me, this is my opinion, there's no IDVA gonna have that level of experience, because you're living that every minute, every second of every single day of that process from start to finish. It don't go away when you clock out. Sleepless nights, who can I talk to about this? What advice can I get on this? What am I going to do with that? And they're all things that, because of how trauma works, you can turn something this big into this big in less than a second. And where are the answers? Where are you meant to get the answers? Because if you went to get legal advice, I've heard solicitors say it's too complex. We can't take your case on, it's too complex. What are you meant to do if there's nothing there for you?
Yeah, and I mean, look, in my cases, I would have rather a solicitor had said that to me. Instead, what I got was greedy people going, oh, nice and complex.
Yeah.
I was going to run this bill up.
Yeah.
And then they knew from the start that it was complex, and they just used that to their own benefit to make sure that I was paying through the nose for it. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. I just think that most solicitors are not trained, are they?
No.
And at that point,
when
when you go to a solicitor, at that point, you're an absolute physical nervous wreck, aren't you? And
yeah.
you are desperate, absolutely desperate for the answers that you're searching for.
Yeah, and you don't know how, you can't get it across. I mean, for me, I got a solicitor later down the line, years later, and first thing I did is I said to her, I want a meeting with you, and I know I'm going to pay for it, obviously,
Yeah.
but I want to sit down with you for an hour, and I don't want to talk about my case. I want to explain a narcissist to you, and I want you to understand what you're dealing with before you take my case on. Because if you can't deal with what this person is, then don't take it on. And I explained everything to her, and she kind of obviously can't really understand it because hasn't experienced it, but she got the general principles, and she worked well with that, being, having that extra bit of knowledge, which is one of the reasons I'm trying to write these books, to give knowledge so that people can read these things and be like, oh, okay.
And how did you explain it to her?
I just kind of talked through behaviors she was going to encounter. I said to her, no matter what you send, you cannot accuse of anything, right? Because the second you accuse, they're going to just go on the defensive. You can't threaten, because as soon as you threaten, they're going to go on the defensive. You have to try and put things in a way that makes it seem to her like she's going to win, and she's winning. So it has to come across like it's her idea and it's her thoughts, because a narcissist can never be wrong. They always have to be right, and they always have to feel that they've beaten you in some way. So you have to position everything from our side as if we're giving in and she's winning. Mm-hmm. And that's what she did. Mm. So you can't go in guns blazing, doesn't work. You can't threaten, doesn't work. You can't try and order, doesn't work. You have to play their game, unfortunately. And
it is, and that's exactly what it is, isn't it? You've got to learn how to play the game, and you've got to learn sharpish, haven't you? Because the minute you start showing any weakness, you've had it, haven't you?
Yeah. It's so unfortunate that getting out is just the start, really. And that's very hard for me to. When I sometimes have guys who reach out to me on social media and they say, I'm in a terrible space. I've read one of your books, but I don't know who to talk to. I can't afford a psychologist, and I can't afford this or whatever. Could I maybe talk to you for half an hour? And I always say yes, because I want to try and help them. And I always do tell them, look, I'm not a psychologist. I don't have any training in this. I'm not, I'm literally just an author who has experience in this stuff, and I try and campaign to raise awareness. But I always say to them, let's start with the basic thing. I'm going to tell you something. You're not going to want to hear it, but you need to hear it. This is going to suck. You are going to go through hell now. You think you went through hell, you still got it. So don't think you're out. You're halfway there, but you're halfway. Keep going. And all of them say oh, well, I thought now that I was out, it was kind of no. And they all kind of appreciate the fact that they get told this up front. I wish someone had told me up front, because I thought, I'm free. And no.
You wouldn't believe how bad it is, would you? Unless you've lived that, you cannot believe how bad it is. How bad it's failing. It's so shocking.
It's so bad it fails. If you can get to the other side of it, it's obviously so worth it, and you can have that peace of mind. And especially if there's children involved or things like that, you need to be able to see your kids. But it shouldn't have to be that way. Yeah. and that it shouldn't have to be that way for anyone. No woman should get treated like that. No man should get treated no one should get treated like that.
No, absolutely not. And I think that were really good advice that you've just gave. So I think for anybody listening to that would be really good suggestion to actually, when they do go and make an appointment with a solicitor, to actually try and explain what they are actually dealing with before they even go into legalities. Because I think when you are traumatised, you can't follow the timeline, can you? So you're jumping from one occasion to the next, and it's hard for people to. So when women come and see us, we have to kind of come back to the beginning. We need to get so that we can try and figure out how that pattern has gone. So I think that's a really good, interesting bit of advice for people to actually try and explain, rather than what's happened to them, explain the type of person and the type of thought process that person has. Because when you've been in that intimate relationship with somebody, or any domestic relationship, I find that there's only you really knows how that person's mind, how they're going to react to things.
Yeah. And it's not about the legal side of it, because the lawyer knows the legal side of it, but that doesn't help if they don't know how to deal with the actual person, and the only person who knows that is you.
Yeah.
Because you've managed to survive years of abuse without getting killed, you know how to kind of make sure it goes the right way. And now you have someone on your side, but they have to know that, So it's. I mean, one thing I'm trying to do is, there shouldn't be a need for someone to have to sit down and explain to a solicitor or a judge or a policeman about these things. They should know them already. They should learn them. I've started a campaign the other day. It's called Read the Change. And basically what I've done is I've gone out on all my social media, and I've said, doesn't have to be my book, but take one of my books. Here's a letter I've written. Take this letter, take the book, post it to your local police station, your local court, your local MP, your politician that you know of. If we can flood these people, I mean, I would do it myself. I know that sounds a bit self-serving because people are going to have to buy my book, but I just don't have the resources to do that. All the money I make from any of my books, I just pump straight back into supporting and raising awareness. So, but if we can flood the system with information, and it could be any book, any YouTube video, whatever, if suddenly it shows up on the desk of 10,000 judges, courts, police, even journalists, because people aren't going to take it seriously until it's front and center, mainstream, news every night.
That's the thing. I think, because I've done national news reports and stuff with Channel 4, Sky News. I've done it BBC, and it's like a flashing pan. It might be that topic for that week or that month or that couple of months, but then it dips again and then it's forgot about. And the problem is, the majority of victims are gagged, aren't they? So even if they feel like they want to speak out, they are gagged. So how can you get any form of support from anybody when you're not even allowed to speak about what is happening to you? That is so wrong. So wrong.
No, and I think that's one of the reasons I decided to kind of stand up and tell my story. And I didn't like telling my story in the beginning. I still don't like it, but I'm just used to it now.
Yeah.
Is because I thought, well, actually I can do it. And I can stand up and I can tell the story. And if everyone who can do it does it, and like you, I've been on BBC Radio. I've got an interview coming out on Sky next Tuesday. But if we all do it, maybe if a few people do it, it kind of does this. But if everyone who can speak up starts doing the same thing, hopefully we can get to a point where it can't get ignored.
Yeah, and that is exactly what needs to happen. We need as many to come forward as possible, because that's the only way. They want to hear voices, but they want to hear that they're going off a lot of the time historic cases, when we know that things are progressively getting worse. They are definitely 100% getting worse. And unless... But the thing is, it's such a massive issue. It affects the entire system anyway, in one way or another, because mental health... We actually have mental health referring into Resolute because they don't know how to deal with trauma, and it's too complex for them. But ultimately, I think it's when people get it. If somebody gets what you've been through, understands how that works, and don't think they're going crazy, and reassures them that yes, that absolutely is domestic abuse, because half the time they want that confirming so badly, because they do feel like they're going insane, don't they? I did. I felt like I was going crazy.
No, I felt like there was something wrong with me. Like, oh my God, I don't even remember all these things I'm supposedly doing or saying or whatever. Because obviously they gaslight you so badly that they aim to destroy your mind and make you doubt yourself. I mean, that is literally the name of their game.
What do you think? What do you think is actually at the root of it? Do you think it is learnt behaviour from childhood? Do you think it's just the naturally vile people? Because ultimately you've got good and bad people, aren't you, in all walks of life? And like I said before, that's male, female, black, white, pink, yellow. I don't care, me. People are people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's not right what's happening on any level. And certainly the impact that it's having on children that are growing up in this scenario. Because, you know, they say that they listen to children's voices. They don't. They don't at all. Because a lot of the time, they're actually gaslighting children as well.
Of course, though, an abuser abuses. They don't. They don't. This is the other thing people don't get. They think, like, if take me for example, they'll think, okay, I believe you. You were abused, so you were abused. Nah, mate, you were all being abused. All the friends, all the people they're talking to, you're all being lied to, you're all being gaslit, you're all being abused. Actually, your little flying monkeys are being abused. They just don't know it.
Exactly. But you on the receiving end of that ultimately is the one that's screaming out for help, hurting, praying that, you know, this is going to be okay. Am I going to survive this? Am I going to be here tomorrow? You know, and the people that you think have got your back, it's cutting into it. It is absolutely, it just is so, yeah. I mean, my own flesh and blood.
In my first book.
Yeah, my own flesh and blood. Oh yeah. Unbelievable.
Oh yeah. Me too. But something I put in my first book, which some people completely agree with me, and some are like, "Oh, you shouldn't have said that." But I'm kind of the opinion. I say what I think.
Yeah. Well, you're entitled, but everybody. And that's another thing that I think we need. It's important to get across as well. This isn't about. For me, I didn't want to start doing these podcasts for any sort of score pointing, any sort of anything. I mean, I don't come in here dollied up and all of that. It is literally because when I set Resolute up 3 years ago, I did not want another woman to go through what I went through on their own with no level of understanding as to how all this works. And I thought, if I can save one woman through this, then I don't care. And I think it's that passion as survivors now, because I can say I'm a survivor. I actually had to pay financially because I'm on receiving end, so it's cost me financially massively. You know, I had a successful business. I lost all that because I ended up being alcohol dependent. And obviously that alcoholism thrown in with narcissism was the perfect scenario, because it was like, oh, she's pissed at it's her, she's pissed. Do you know what I mean? Instead of looking at the bigger picture, it was that. So it was the perfect kind of scenario for my abuser. Which knew exactly. He knew exactly to a T what exactly he was doing to me. Exactly, you know, it's 100%. But
they're masters. They're masters of this entire game. They've got like a little spider web and all the little bits. They're like masters. But what I've said to people that people may or may not agree with, I said, no one's coming to save you. No one's coming to knock your door down and rescue you. You know, Superman's not coming through the door. No one is coming to save you. There is help. There is help available, and there is support available. But the person who has to save you is you.
Yeah.
You have to save yourself with support and help, and you can get there. But don't think someone's coming to save you and you don't have to do it yourself. You have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
But someone can help you.
Yeah. And I do think it is very much your own journey, and that journey, when we support, we create a care plan, and in that care plan, that's at their pace, when they're ready, with no judgment. We understand exactly what they're going through, and that's a massive thing, because I can remember through me, because I wasn't just struggling with my journey from the abuse, I was struggling with my journey from the alcoholism as well. And I can hands down say that my recovery from alcoholism is the hardest thing physically and mentally I've ever had to do in my life. And it was a thought process. It kind of, because all that were happening at the same time, and then it were like, bang, I had the alcohol to deal with on top of everything else, and then the services weren't helping me. I was literally screaming out for help, screaming out, and social services absolutely ripped me to bits because of the alcoholism, when ultimately we all have as coping mechanisms, don't we? And that was there, and this was here at me constantly, terrorising. That's how I can say it, terrorising. And of course I'm going to reach for that, because that is going to block out this. It's going to numb it. Yeah. It's going to numb this. And when it's put there and fed and withheld and fed and withheld, it's not a good place to be. And I think from that place, there's only one way, and that's back up, isn't it? But it's a very hard journey, isn't it, to go through. A lot of processing, reprocessing. But I still believe that it'd be a hell of a damn sight easier if this system were designed better to actually even just listen. Would be a massive bonus. Listen to what victims are saying, rather than making that first assumption that ultimately is putting them in danger. They are putting them in more danger than what they initially were in the first place.
Yeah. Well, the analogy I kind of use sometimes is, when you're in the abusive relationship, it's like you're in prison. Then you manage to escape the prison and you get to the outside. But to get free, there's a minefield you have to run through. And that minefield is the system. So it can be done, and you can get through it and to the other side safe, but you have to watch your step.
Yeah. But how can all of that change? What's your theory behind all of that changing? I know what mine is. And a lot of it is simple. Yeah. Simple, isn't it? Simple procedures that need to be put in place. I think there's a lot of red tape that stops it, because ultimately I do think that they actually protect the perpetrator. They're protecting the perpetrator, and they're not protecting victims.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much that has to be done, but I mean, education, I think, is a huge thing, that people dealing with these kind of things need to be educated on what they're dealing with, because they have no clue. They think an abuser is someone who's angry and nasty and, might hit someone. Okay, they don't have this full understanding of all of the tools and techniques, the different types of abuse, the way they manipulate and the way they use. They don't understand that. So educating them in those things, getting them to see the person for the person is a big thing, not, a statistic or a bias or a predetermined outcome. But then there has to be something, like you're saying, like maybe a joint force between social services, CAFCAS, police, court, whatever, where they actually all get together and decide how is it best going to serve the victim, not how is each individual thing best going to serve our processes so that we get good conviction rates or good, this, or get appeal rates.
Yeah, because that's basically what it is all about, isn't it? ticking them
Yeah.
boxes and, you know, covering up the reality of what is actually going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's the story of the world nowadays, isn't it? Though it's all about, you know, you can be. I mean, if you look at like the business world, you can be the head of a company, and so long as you tick the boxes that say like, you know, we made extra money and revenue was up this year and profit was up this year, you can treat everyone like absolute, you know, rubbish, and everyone who works for you is miserable and, you know, terrible. But who cares? You ticked your boxes. Here's your big bonus.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the thing is as well, there is enough for us. There is enough for us to stand up to this. There is enough for us to change this. You know, because ultimately, if enough for us do stand up, then they're gonna have to listen, aren't they?
Well, that's why I launched this campaign, because I thought if I can get a bit of movement going, you know, I've got quite a bit of media attention at the moment anyway. I'm doing quite a lot of interviews, a lot of podcast, TV things. I was the guest the other day on British Thought Leaders for Sky. I thought if I can start this and just get some momentum, and then everyone I talk to, I tell about it, I push it on social media, try to get people involved. If we can get every single one of those people involved and getting everyone they know involved, and they get everyone they know involved, and we just keep pushing, knocking on the door saying, hey, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be well, this is wrong for men or this is wrong for women. This is wrong.
Yes,
like it has to be fixed for everyone.
Yeah.
And if we can just get that momentum going.
Yeah, I do. But the thing is, I think that to divide us isn't going to achieve anything, is it?
No.
This is, it's like we said right at the beginning, this ain't about men. It's about both. It's about human beings. And ultimately, a lot of the time, human beings' basic human rights are being breached. And, you know, it's as though we're living in a country that don't give a shit. You can just go about doing whatever you want and there's no consequence behind it. But yet women that speak out about family court are getting sent to prison. But yet a rapist is getting off with it, you know, and it's all back to front.
It's like you said at the beginning, you know, you said, you know, you're campaigning for women because you've got a lived experience. I'm campaigning for men because I've got a lived experience. And there's no need, you know, these people on social media, oh, you're talking about women, what about men? Or you're talking about men, what about women? It's like, go away, be part of the solution, not add to the problem.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly. And I ain't got time or headspace for crap like that anyway.
And the one thing I always try to point out to people, and I hate having to point it out because it should just be obvious from the way I talk and the way I write and everything, is I want more support for men. That's what I'm campaigning for. I in no way want any support taken away from women. Women need all the support they can get. I want men to also get it. Not to take away, to give it. Because that's stupid.
We do. We just need to keep pushing this out there, and just keep going with it. And I think anybody that's trying to raise any form of awareness around this, they're all doing brilliant. Because let's face it, we're all doing this because we've lived it, and we're that passionate about it because we've lived it. And all this dividing and almost like competing with each other. What is all that about? I just don't get it. I do not get it.
But also this idea that you don't want to talk about it. Like I've written these 3 books, so I'll give you a little show. So those are the 3 I've written, and it's a series on Amazon called Understanding Domestic Abuse and Narcissism, and it's good for anyone. You know, it's good for guys to read, it's good for women to read. But I've gone to people I know and have known my whole life, and I've said, please buy my book and read it, because it'll educate you. And they're like, oh, I don't know if I can read something. That's tough, you know, that's tough material. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point. And then I say to them, I'll tell you what, buy it, right, and go and give it to someone else you think needs it. Don't even bother reading it. But at least by buying it, what you're doing is making Amazon push it higher up the ranks, means someone who wants to come along and actually read it for the right reasons can find it easier. And to buy all 3 on Kindle is less than the price of a movie ticket. So say, do that. And you know what? They don't even do that.
No.
So it's and you know, I get if I was like some billionaire living in a mansion telling people to go buy my stuff, but I literally am not a billionaire millionaire at all wealthy whatsoever.
No,
And
because
every cent
no,
I make,
because
I push
family
back
courts.
into it.
No, because family courts have took all your money. That's why.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, like I said, I was a CEO, and now I'm literally an author. But any money I make, I just put back into it because it's not about. No one's going to become rich on campaigning against domestic abuse. But what you can do is actually make a difference, and that's you know, like I said, I'm 42, and I want to spend the rest of my life actually doing something that makes a difference because yeah, it was great being in the business world and corporate world, and I did well and I had good success, but it didn't make me feel like I'm contributing to the world in any way. Like, and some people do. I didn't feel it, and now I actually want to contribute something back. But I just don't get like you mentioned, you know, your own flesh and blood. And when you're saying to your own flesh and blood, hey, I wrote some books, maybe you could read them or buy them or support me, and they're like, nah, too difficult, don't want to.
Yeah,
it's like,
I know.
Crazy.
We've just got to keep going with it, Jared, and it's been lovely. It's been lovely to speak to you. We'll have to link up again sometime.
Yeah.
When we've got time.
There's a lot to talk about, isn't there?
There is a lot to talk about. It's only scraping surface, isn't it, really? And the thing is, if I was to disclose the things that I know a fact, and I was to speak about the real truth, I know I'd be sent to prison. And I'm sure you could say the same. Because it is way worse than what we're allowed to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I said, I'm busy writing a book at the moment about false allegations, particularly around family court and how they're treated and how they're dealt with. And I think some people are going to get a little bit upset with some of the stuff I've got in there.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you're ruffling some feathers, usually it means you're doing something right.
Yeah.
So just keep going.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah. So you take care.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll catch up another time.